Welcome back once again, everybody. Our next guest has been working in higher education for quite some time and has seen just how the indoctrination of college students has served nobody except for, of course, big government. He has a great op-ed published in Fox News, and he joins us now to talk about it. He is Nicholas Giordano, Campus Reform's higher education fellow and the host of the P.A.S. Report podcast. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
I want to ask you about your Fox Ed because John hears me say this all the time. He probably gets sick of me talking about the fact that I think one of the biggest mistakes we made in America was allowing the government any hand in our children's education. And obviously that mostly pertains to grade school. But with respect to higher educations, the grants that are given out by the federal government, that was the focus of your piece, or one of the focuses of your piece. Talk about that seedy, destructive relationship between government bureaucrats and higher education.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Eisenhower warned about this almost 70 years ago, where he warned that grant funding is going to be used as a vehicle to basically blur the lines between government and higher education because of the increasing costs of research. The government could issue grants, pay for the research, and higher education institutions can do the government's bidding. So now we are seeing this. We've seen it in action for some time. And in the piece, I explained how the University of Wisconsin just got a $5 million grant to develop a program that's going to track misinformation and, quote, strategically correct that misinformation. Now, what's so frightening about this program is that they want to get it into newsrooms throughout the country. So it's going to monitor social media, be put in the newsrooms so that the media, the government, higher education could all coordinate the messaging and the narratives. When we look at misinformation, government's been the largest purveyors of misinformation throughout history. Particularly, we just found out, the 51 intelligence agents that said that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. Now we know it was pushed by Secretary of State Tony Blinken, at the time a campaign advisor. And it really amazes me. Now, in the grant application, it actually talks about COVID-19 and correcting misinformation as it pertains to COVID-19 and vaccinations. Meanwhile, the people that were right were the ones that were being censored online.
It is remarkable. The truth is delayed just long enough to have a political impact, and then it comes out. It happened with Russia collusion. It happened with the Hunter Biden laptop. It's happened with a lot of other things. I want to keep digging into this article. I love this article because when I talk to members of Congress, they sometimes seem to be unaware of the billions of dollars they approve every year for NIH to put out all these woke studies, which then bring woke students bring students into contact with woke professors, and the indoctrination occurs with federal dollars. I went through recently, there's studies like things like, why do gay people have a different diet than straight people? And I'm not really sure there's any value to that, but millions of dollars of tax dollars go to this every time. The pipeline of money from the federal government and the turning of students' minds is so large and significant. Do you think members of Congress have a good understanding of it? And do they realize if they shut it off, they could have a profound effect?
Well, that's the thing. They're the ones with the power to actually stop this nonsense. I mean, you had the University of Kentucky, I think it was over a 5-year period, getting $800,000 to study how cocaine enhances the sex drive of Japanese quail. I mean, this is not what American taxpayer dollars should go to, and American taxpayer dollars shouldn't be going to build out a censorship model that's essentially going to be used against them to take away their freedom of speech. And at Campus Reform, we highlight the importance of freedom of speech because it is the lifeblood of the system. Without it, our system will crumble. So I think it is important that members of Congress begin to look at all this money that's being spent and how this is nothing more than a backdoor attempt to resurrect the Disinformation Governance Board that was supposed to be disbanded a year ago.
Great point.
Yeah, Nicholas, the money's going to come from somewhere, though. I want to ask you a question. I want to play devil's advocate for a moment because I remember 10 years ago or so, I remember reading a piece about how 70-something universities across our country were receiving millions in dollars from the Saudis. Of course, you still have about 40-something active Confucius institutes across America. Some of them are in the process of closing, but they're still open right now. If they don't get the funding from our own federal government, isn't there a concern that they'll be getting funding from outside our shores?
Well, they're already getting funding to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars from countries like Saudi Arabia, as you just mentioned, but also from China. And there's another piece with Campus Reform that I wrote explaining how China has basically infiltrated colleges, campuses throughout the entire country. And you would think that the government would actually be more concerned about that than they would about censoring Americans. The reality is that foreign influence on our college campuses has been growing, and the university systems have become addicted to this funding. Not only does China spend that money to get their foreign students here to get the American education, we know that intelligence agents are on college campuses, but we also know about influence campaigns to basically portray China in a positive light on college campuses. Yeah. The Penn Biden Center, UPenn, has received millions of dollars when the Penn Biden Center was operational. Why were they giving that type of money? So the foreign money is already coming in, and this is another area where Congress could actually move quickly. The Department of Education already flagged something like $8 billion that the universities haven't reported from foreign donations. It is something that should be investigated further, and Congress should be looking to pass laws that when it's a foreign adversary, perhaps colleges shouldn't be allowed to take that money.
Really important concept. I want to turn to the campaign a little bit because Joe Biden, well, he announced his re-election today. I mean, he didn't really announce. He didn't go out and meet any people, didn't shake any hands, didn't kiss any babies, didn't engage all America. But he put a video out. It was kind of the red wall speech without the red wall. But I want to ask about this. There are two differences to this election that Joe Biden doesn't have the advantage on. There's no COVID right now, so he can't hide in the basement with COVID crisis. And the Hunter Biden laptop is now very, very real. Talk a little bit about how those two things off the table could affect his electoral chances this time, not to mention his approval rating.
Well, let's not forget, there was an announcement that there would be an announcement today that he would be announcing he was running for president. And I actually brought this up to my students. I explained that Joe Biden has announced he's running for president. And I was actually met with groans. I was surprised that many students reacted that way. But it is something that's really profound. You're right. He doesn't have the luxury of COVID to hide in the basement to actually go out. He's going to have to campaign, but this is partly speculation on my part. Think about the charges that were just brought against the former president a few weeks ago. Yeah. We still have the Georgia investigation, and we still have the two federal investigations. So he may be able to hide out if he's charged under those premises.
Great point.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that it was a pre-taped video, though, I'm convinced that it took multiple takes, maybe dozens or even hundreds to finally get it right. Nick Giordano, professor, podcast host, Campus Reform Fellow. You do it all. Thank you again for your time, sir. We'll have you back on again very soon. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to talk about the latest reports coming out of Sudan.